Okay, well, we're going to be talking about jails, and we're going to focus on the Benton County Jail. And with me right now is Benton County Sheriff Steve Keane. Thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate you coming in. I put together this long list of questions, and you were so good as to come kind of prepared for it. So, how many people are in the Benton County Jail today? I'm curious.
As of today, there's 589. 161 of those are contracts.
161 are contracts, all right. 589. How does that compare to other times? Is it high, low, in between?
It's pretty typical. We average right around 600, but it's been as high as I think 775 back in 2008. But usually it's around 600 to 650.
So does that include actual beds and mattresses for everyone, or are people sleeping on the floor? I mean, what?
Our capacity is about 738, so if we stay around that number, depending on the class, how inmates are classified, we can provide them with a bed other than when they're initially booked into the holding cells.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have them classified and move them up into the living areas.
What's the ethnic breakout of people in the jail? Are there any patterns that have emerged?
Not really. About 86% are white. But we also include Hispanics in that. The way that they do the fingerprint classification would classify them with the whites, but the majority of them are white males that are in our jail.
Mm-hmm. And what are the reasons that people are in a county jail? What's the difference between a jail and a prison?
Prison is usually when you're sentenced for longer than a year. Most of the inmates that are in our jail have not been convicted yet. They're waiting trial and those types of things. So inmates can range from violent felons to people in there for driving offenses.
Oh, so you've got the full range. So your work as employees and what you supervise there, it's not just people in there for DUI spending their mandatory 24 hours or whatever. You have people who are up on murder charges and assault and everything else.
That's correct, yes.
Whoa. So how many staff does it take to manage 600 people?
You know, all in all, there's quite a few, but when you break it down by shift, we only have about 18 corrections officers that work during day shift and 13 at night. We have about 118 employees in corrections. That includes the corrections officers, clerical staff. We have to transport prisoners to and from court and to and from different locations. So it takes quite a bit when you're talking about a 24/7 operation.
Mm-hmm. If you want to join our conversation, I'll give you the phone number. It's 509-547-8726. If you were recently in jail and want to tell us what that was all about, we'd be happy to hear from you. Or if you have any comments about it, that's great. So what is the annual budget to take care of, an average of 600 people?
It's expensive. It's about $17.5 million.
$17.5 million. Where does that money come from?
Most of it comes from our taxpayers. We do have outside contracts, and we bring in about $4.5 million of outside revenue, but most of it comes from within the county general fund budget.
What does that work out per prisoner per day? Inmate, rather.
The actual daily bed rate is about 62-67 last year, and we're projecting it to be about 64-35 for 2014 and 15.
I don't have the, what we spend on children to educate them, but, Sheriff, that makes me sad. And I know it makes you sad too. I know that you're not here thinking, oh, running the jail is a great activity for the county, but it's just crazy, crazy expensive. And so, is our jail kind of like a Taj Mahal of jails? How would you, I know you've probably traveled and seen a lot of jails. How do we compare?
I think as far as technology, we're right in the middle of the road. Our jail's not that old. It was just remodeled in 2003, but it's clean. And if you went and you took a tour of it, you would think it was one of the nicer jails. But the inmates in our jail doesn't get anything more than you can get anywhere else in the state.
Okay, so when you were talking about where the revenue comes from, are you talking about county property taxes? Where? I mean, it comes from the county budget, your money, and is that all from, where is that money? What is that?
There's a lot of different sources of taxes that come into the county, and the county administrator actually oversees all that. But as far as the jail portion of it, or the, public safety portion of it, actually, when you look at a county's budget, about 90% of the general fund goes towards public safety. So it's not just the jail. It's a very expensive proposition to keep our citizens safe, whether it's out on patrol or whether they're actually in the jail.
90% of the county's money is on public safety?
Roughly, and it's pretty much that way across this country.
Wow. Oh. Does the county charge inmates?
No.
Why not?
Well, most of them don't have any money. That's one of the reasons what lands them in jail. But and that's part of the problem, is the whole pay or serve issue. We have several inmates in our jail that are in our jail because they're not paying fines. And in some cases they can't afford it. In other cases they make the decision not to prioritize that, so they find themselves in our jail. So charging inmates that couldn't afford it to begin with probably wouldn't work out too well.
So that creates an even greater vicious cycle. I saw something recently, and it was on John Oliver. And I know that John Oliver is a comedian at heart, but quite frankly, I feel that a lot of our major comedians today are doing some significant work in various kinds of investigative reporting. And John Oliver did quite a take on the cycle that is created when people cannot pay fines, and then it just gets worse and worse. The fine mounts, and then they may end up in jail, and the ability to even pay a fine that started out maybe as less than $100 is now just crazy. And we've ended up as a society costing ourselves a lot more money. So we have someone that can't pay a fine, but then we double up on that as citizens here in the Tri-Cities, and we pay an extra $64 a day, or 62, whatever you said it was, to keep that person in jail. What is the logic in that? I know you don't sentence people, but share that with me. I don't understand it.
When you look at it from just a money standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because it costs more to have them sit in jail than they work off their fine. But the other part of this is the actual punishment and the deterrent from committing additional crimes. And then the other piece to this, I've had the opportunity to sit in on some of the hearings with the judges, and I've seen time and time again where the judges have been very liberal with their, helping them work through those fines and to pay those things off so they don't end up in jail. And I think that in very few of those that I've seen where there was an actual inability to pay the fine, I think a lot of times it's the individual choice as to whether or not they're going to pay the fine.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, they'll make the decision to pay for their cell phone, but they won't make the decision to pay a $25 a month fine to keep them out of jail.
Yeah, and I understand punishment, but I also feel that we end up being punished also. So that's where it concerns me a little bit more. You were talking before about, you mentioned that the county has contracts, and so where are those from, and what does that mean?
Currently we contract with the United States Marshals and the Washington State Department of Corrections, and basically we have a contract with each of them where they would house some of their inmates with us, and we use that revenue that we bring in to help offset our operational costs, which in turn lowers our daily bed rate for the cities and the county as well.
So what kind of prisoners are those? What kind of offenses are they?
It ranges. It varies, just like regular local inmates. Most of them are violations of some type, DOC violations.
Oh, I see. Okay. Are all of the people that are in the county jail U.S. citizens or have legal papers to be in the United States?
The majority of them are, yeah. We do get illegal immigrants that are in our jail occasionally, and we work with the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, to to deal with those situations, but we're usually a temporary housing for those types of individuals.
Where do they go? Are they deported or what? I mean,
There's a process,
Okay.
yeah, there is a process for deportation, and that, like I said, that goes through ICE. We don't get involved in that process at all,
Mhm.
other than the holding of them.
sounds like that's a whole nother topic
Mhm.
that we can get into, of course. I've got some other big questions that are more philosophical for you. We're going to take a break right now, and I'm going to kind of put you on the spot with that. Maybe they aren't your opinions, but you're in the jail world. You share information with people, so I know you've heard about ideas. We're going to see what other ideas that might be crazy but are out there in terms of lowering the costs for citizens in paying for a county punishment. We'll be back in a moment. Okay, I want to go back to, with the sheriff, what are the biggest liabilities in operating the jail? And liabilities meaning you can't really control them.
There's so much that goes into operating the jail. It's a little city in itself. When you have 600 or 700 inmates that are in our facility, some of them will come in with behavioral problems, others will come in with substance abuse problems, mental health problems, and a lot of them don't take care of themselves and they have some significant medical problems. But if they commit a crime, they end up in our facility and we have to figure out ways to take care of them. So we have a doctor on staff, we have nurses on staff, but we're not always equipped to properly handle an inmate